Hi, I'm Graham Welsh. I'm a luthier from Dundee. I remember when I was quite young, always being a fixer of things. I used to have my mother shouting at me for taking things apart. I used to say to her, I'm never going to learn about things if you don't take things apart. You're never going to be able to put things back together. So from a very young age, I remember fixing things, and I've always been fixing things. It was inevitable that I ended up working with my hands. I learned a lot of my hand skills working with spoke shaves, chisels, and craft of wood. I remember having guitars and making guitars at school. My first project from my art teacher, it challenged me to build a bass guitar. I remember going down to the woodwork class and crafting this bass guitar, which I was very proud of. And that was quite a challenge, being 15, 16, 17 years old and coming away with a product as early as that. My daughter once came to me and asked me what a child was carrying in the street. I told her it was a violin. She asked me then, could she have a violin for Christmas? And at the age of 4.5, we were reluctant to say, yes, you can have a violin for Christmas, but she just kept pestering, I want a violin for Christmas. So Simone eventually got a violin that Christmas, and we were forced to find a violin teacher, and now Simone is a professional violin player. She was the person that basically started me off on my love of violins. From a very early age, Simone showed some great talent, and it was apparent that we were going to have to find better quality violins to help her through her career. It made me want to explore more of the violin world and learn more about how a violin worked. In 1998, I decided to go to Angus College, where I learnt through a HNC in stringed instrument technology. I was able to construct a violin within my first year. I learned a lot of things about how the violin worked, how it could be fixed, how the pegs were shaped, a lot of aspects of violin maintenance. I've recently found a really old violin. It's got really quaint writing inside that said that it's made from wood from the Ark. I never know what I'm going to find inside a violin. Sometimes you can see labels, sometimes you can see repair labels where no one else can see it. It's part of the joy of taking the top off a violin for the first time and revealing a maker or some kind of marking inside that confirms your suspicion of who actually made the instrument. No one else gets the opportunity to do that. As you can see, someone's inscribed inside. It's really an old violin. It's beautiful to look at. It's got things wrong with it that are going to have to be addressed. Not only is the violin back and ribs going to need some considerable conservation work. If you can see from the top has had many cracks in its lifetime, and someone's done us a favour of at least keeping the cracks closed. It'll allow us to take off these old cleats. Each of these cleats will have to be taken off and redone and tidied up basically. But I'm really looking forward to working on this violin. I'm so passionate about bringing something like this back to life. This violin as it stands is a dead instrument. It can produce no sound. This project will probably take in the region of 40 hours to restore. I think what brings the violin to life for me is working with the player, getting a resolution to what the problem actually is. It's solving his issue and giving him the confidence that he should have to go on and play his instrument within the orchestra, or whether it's a young student, it's fixing the instrument so that they gain the confidence again. And that's really the passion that I have for the working with violins. It's being able to create or fix something that's not correct. Looking at the instrument or examining areas of the instrument, sometimes you can just come up with something that they haven't noticed. It's interesting, sometimes there's buzzes on the instrument. They'll tell me that the fingerboard's buzzing, and the fingerboard's like a living thing. It's wood. It's always evolving and changing with atmospheres and weather. Sometimes you can just get a roughness on the fingerboard that's needing re-honed to get the smoothness back into the ebony. Part of the art is just realising what's wrong with an instrument and gauging what is required. You know, Scotland's always had a tradition of violin making. Through the centuries, there's always been someone who's wanted to create a violin for their local band or their local group, and also to be playing even on the street corner. There's always been a very, very strong Scottish violin making history, and for me, I'd just love to be able to extend that history and become part of the tradition and passing on some information to perhaps the next generation.